fund balance retention expenditures in the amount of $337,380.68. Obviously, it's a public hearing, the public is invited to make comments or provide input, and the board will discuss the purpose of the proposed expenditures.
So up on the screen, I'll just provide the information up here and then some history. So up on the screen here, this is the $337,380.67 and so it's not to exceed amount is what we're talking about. And through the budget process, we were, as a board and as an administration, we looked at a variety of areas that could be cut, and we were also charged with identifying areas in the budget that maybe could be purchased in a different way by not putting it into the budget next year, but also things that could be utilized this year right now, that it would be advantageous to the movement that we've already been making. Not something new necessarily that wasn't in our, our natural movement and our multi-year plan, but something that would be very helpful. So we do have a copier cycle, so you'll see a lot of this is just hardware or technology. And so those are the easy things that we could identify, like these are some pricey items, we need to have them. We have a copier cycle that we could remove to get a budget, 36,000, about 12,000 apiece. And then access points, wireless access points, which can be used right now, no problem. We need those and the firewalls to protect our infrastructure here. And then we tried one year to actually eliminate Chromebooks from the budget just to save $60,000 to $70,000, and that was we had a lot of difficulties as a result of it. While the devices themselves continue to function in many ways, and they would for another year or two after that, they did not provide us with the access or the capacity for doing several types of learning processes and the state assessment, which was a big deal as well. So we started to do our state assessment that year, and we had significant problems, which of course impacts a lot during that time frame, and then whether the kids are even going to work after having to be stressed trying to get in and then trying to get another device and separate devices and move them to different schools and so forth, and trying to, not the kids, the devices that go from one school to another to make sure that we can do the required assessing that the state requires. So we want to continue. We have a cycle every third grader, sixth grader, and ninth grader. They get a new Chromebook, and they keep that for the time frame that they're in the rest of elementary school, middle school, and then high school. The tractor, that is a one-time expense. We have a tractor that we've been fixing, and it's just getting difficult to do so, and we need a new tractor, and so it's at end of life. That is one of the quotes for a tractor with the specific specifications that they need, that the grounds department needs. And then a large initiative, we've actually been working on this for a couple of years, doing the research behind this, on the science of reading. Two schools, Ridge Memorial School, Jaffrey Grade School, and they also feed right into the middle school. And so we have identified, reading as an area that we need to improve upon. Now, there's as well all subject areas, but certainly since COVID, we have quite a bit of data showing that we're rebounding in the secondary schools in the area of writing and literacy. But we want to do that, more intentionally. We also have had some transition at the elementary schools with a lot of staff, especially at Jaffrey Grade School. New people coming on in. Both schools, teach reading for certain, but do so in different ways. different approaches. When they funnel into the middle school, we have a very wide range of skill sets. And so we'd like to have continuity from kindergarten all the way through 8th grade, actually. And the science of reading literacy curriculum, we haven't purchased any big curriculums for 9 years. We took it out of the budget because there was this rotating annual curriculum line that was like for $40,000 or $45,000, and it was, we did not want to just spend money for the sake of spending money. So we haven't spent several $100,000 that was in place, but we are asking that we get this important curriculum now. Today, not as we speak, but earlier today, there was a committee that went to a school to watch how it was done in a variety of grade levels with a school that has already implemented some of I would say, the top 3 curriculums that we're looking at. And the middle school has already gone through and taken a rubric and assessed which programs they want from the descriptions and what it offers based upon the curriculum that they have already written and have already in place. And then next Monday, the elementary is getting together to do the exact same thing for the day, the committee that's working on this. And I've asked them not to rush it. I want them to be, doing this with haste and, in a sense of like urgency, but that they need to be thorough as they do as well. It's not something that we wanted to say, oh, this is the one because we need to purchase it. We have it down to the top 3 that we know that we've researched that provide all the resources that will be consistent in both grade schools all the way, helping us transition into 6th grade here and stay through 8th grade and give a really solid foundation for their high school career here in literacy. So it's not just reading, it's writing as well. And so we've asked, definitely getting it right now would be of a significant benefit to us. To get started, to have teachers be able to interact with the materials before full implementation in the fall, be able to do some professional development on it, to implement certain parts of the curriculum to get used to it with students this year. And so those are the expenditures that we're asking for that we put in the budget originally, but are looking for a different way to get those. Our budget we were able to put forth that was, we will go on to the warrant article that we were able to put forth is we have a default budget and we are putting a proposed budget that's $127,000 below default. Understanding that that's something to give the taxpayers a choice come fall, come March, but for fall.
Okay. So, are there questions from the board regarding what Ruben just? Okay, so, are there questions from the public?
Yeah, why wouldn't it be in the budget?
Excuse me?
Could
You
you
need-
just,
you need-
could
could you
you
please
just
state your-
provide-
Oh,
Could you just provide your name and town?
Mike Whitehead from Ridge,
Mike,
Whitehead.
like, thank you.
And I'm just wondering, why isn't it in the budget? Why are we doing it this way before the budget? You know what I mean?
Yep.
It's a lot of money for not being in the budget.
Right. Okay, thank you. Do you want to offer any, I have a feeling this is a key question that will go through this entire hearing, so.
Yeah, so it was put in the original budget that we were going forward with, which was 8-some-odd% higher than the current operating budget or the current adopted budget. We were requested to find a way to get that number lower. There were 2 things that were happening on that Saturday. One was that find a way with staffing, if you need to, try not to eliminate staffing, but try to find a way to meet our priority areas that we had identified and do so with less. money. And then also, a suggestion was to look at those areas that we could fund right now and present those to the board and see how we can move forward with getting those sooner. So that we're not putting, that in for another $340,000 onto the budget for next year.
Just to restate what Ruben says, these were items that were in next fiscal year's budget that we're trying to pay for out of this fiscal year, so we can lower next year's budget to keep the tax rate down. Okay, that's, simply put, that's what it is. We're trying to take care of items from this, using this year's money to pay for items that were in next year's budget.
So, I'm sorry, this is money for 23, 24. Correct.
Correct.
Yes, Roberta.
Roberta Acer, OESER from Ringe. I don't know how that can be true. I thought you were using the unassigned fund balance that you've retained.
That's correct.
And when this warrant article that established the retention of unassigned fund balance to be used in subsequent years, I was all in favor of it because I thought it was a way for the budget to be done by not putting what if in every line item, which to contain, you know, the scare thing that there was money available in case bad stuff happened or you needed it. But this is basically, last year you overspent the budget by $410,000. Now you're talking about $337,000, and there's nothing. I went through this book about 20 times trying to find out how much money is in the retained unassigned fund balance. And it says in the warrant article, I mean in the statute, that you're supposed to put an accounting of it. A one-line thing of what you spent, I don't think is accounting for the activities of the retained general fund. So if this is this year's planned surplus, it could be encumbered. But it sounds like you're spending money that you've retained from previous years. So I'd really like to know how much money is in the unassigned fund balance retention fund. There is nowhere in this book. It's public information, and it has not been made public. And I think that this is, a way to overspend the budget, and it's not very transparent. In fact, this public hearing, I could only find posted in one place, and that was the newspaper that somebody told me about. It's not on your webpage. Can't find it.
So my understanding is that the law is pretty clear on it, that it's 5% of the net assessment, meaning the taxable portion
Correct.
of the budget. And I believe the number is, it's 900.
It's 1 million. It's 1 million and maybe 9,000. Yeah, it's just over $1 million. Look, I have that.
So what's,
So, Roberta, first off, this is not part of next year's budget, it's not part of.
you just said it was.
Wait a
You
minute.
kept it out of this
You
year's
listen, will
budget.
you please listen to me? Always speak
One at a
up when you don't
time.
like what
Roberta,
you
we'll
hear.
give you it. We'll give you a chance to come back.
So
to that.
please let me explain it, and then I'll answer your questions, okay? At the beginning of the year, we had an unassigned fund balance that came from last year, not this year,
Mhm.
so it's now part of this year's budget. All right? What we're doing is we're trying to, I'll try to explain it my way if I can, that we need $337K, all right, to pay for things in next year's budget that we could purchase this year. In order to do that, we need to have the available funding to do that. We have a cash flow issue. if we wait until the end of the year, all right, because we're gonna have our $300,000, that's less than 1%, and we've never been that close to the budget ever, all right? So we're gonna end up at the end of the year with over $337,000. So it's a cash flow issue. We're taking it out of the unassigned fund to spend it on items that we need this year, and then at the end of the year, we're going to have that surplus to carry over for the unassigned fund for the following year. Okay? So it's a cash flow issue, it's not costing anything out of this year's budget that wasn't already planned.
Thank you, Charlie. Roberta?
So are these items in the 23-24 budget?
No, they're not.
So you're using what's in your slush fund to pay for them, and then you're going to retain the 337,000 that you think you're gonna have left at the end of June 30th,
Correct,
to replenish the slush fund.
correct. Well, no,
That's what you just said. That's what you just
That's gonna go
said.
somewhere
You're
else.
anticipating having $337,000 left this year, but because it's a cash flow issue, you're gonna use what's in the unassigned slush fund, and then you'll have that much left over at the end of the year that you'll put it back in.
correct.
That's what I said. You're overspending the budget by $337,000.
Wait a minute. Before
Going in the back door.
that money goes back into the quote slush fund, it has to come from the board. The board has to vote on how much of that comes back, okay? So that's when I say we put it back in, the answer is yes, we can, but it depends on who's on the board at the time and what they vote. But it's determined usually in the July, August time period, after all the books are closed, when we know what our actual surplus is. Up until that point in time, we don't know what our actual surplus is because we haven't processed all the invoices from all the expenses that occurred in the prior year.
I'd just like to point out that it is an unassigned fund balance, not a slush fund. I understand the temptation to characterize it that way, but this is set up by the state, voted on by the voters, and it's part of trying, I think, to properly manage the budget of the school district. Trying to keep taxes down as much as we can, but at the same time trying to provide a quality of education that's going to keep our property values up and our kids well educated.
Also, the town of Ringe has an unassigned fund balance.
Yes.
Herbert Acer, you're mistaken about the towns. All towns have unassigned fund balance. They can't spend them with a public hearing. It has to be an emergency, and it has to go to DRA to get permission. You cannot, towns cannot overspend their budget, even if they've got $3 million in their unassigned fund balance.
We
Can't be
cannot,
spent.
we can't overspend our budget either.
You are,
We are
with a
not.
public hearing.
We haven't overspent the budget.
You just said these weren't in the budget. $337,000 in
But that
items that
doesn't-
weren't in the budget. With a public hearing, you are able to spend out of your unassigned fund balance, which no town can do. They cannot say, we have $1 million in our unassigned fund balance, and we had unanticipated needs come up, we'll have a public hearing and spend it. Can't do it. School districts are different because of what they did with statute in 2020. So you are able
We
to
didn't do it
spend
now. We
you're
didn't-
able to overspend your budget.
We didn't do it though. It was the voters in the town of Jaffrey and Ringe,
Mm-hmm.
okay?
And at the state level. And the state does try to, protect education. I'm sorry, there's another gentleman,
Sure.
yes?
Yeah, my name is Mike Devil and I live over in Ringe. I've got two things to say and I'll leave it at that. it sounds like you're trying to go in the back door to get what you wanted this year through the slush fund or the inappropriate or unappropriated funds. And number two, I was just curious, how many people voted for this on the board? Was this a unanimous decision that you were gonna go for this $330-something thousand? Did everybody agree with this?
We did not vote on it yet.
Oh.
We did vote to have this public hearing.
Oh, yeah, and
And the vote will come after.
And that'll be published like in the Monadnock Ledger or something like that? So we can find out who's voting for it and who's
Oh,
voting
no,
against it?
the vote.
Are you gonna vote right now here after this is, the public session's done? Right?
Yes.
Maybe we will stick around for a while, Mike. Be interested to see who's going in the back door.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, you're a
So-
member of the public, correct?
Yes, I am. Leslie
Okay.
McLean, Chakra. I have two questions. Is this common practice, what we're trying to do right now? Is this a common practice for schools? This type of expenditure, taking money from the unassigned fund, is this a common practice?
It's my understanding that it is.
Okay. And with this money being spent, are we over, would we, based on our projections, be over the total amount that was approved on the budget, or 31 million and whatever, last year? Would this push us over that amount?
Again, not as far as our projections are, and not as far as I know.
Okay,
I
thank
can't
you.
say that with certainty because we're not at the end of the year yet.
So we're not overspending the total budget?
No.
Thank you.
Typically, maybe this isn't fair, but typically we underspend by, I don't know, what was last year? I think we underspent by, do we have that number?
I know that we returned over half a
It
million.
was like around $600,000 that we underspent by last year, I believe. I'm not sure about the format, but that's the typical rate. We don't spend to the dollar because we're keeping close track of that.
We were very close the year before. Obviously, we had that cash flow issue going on, during the default budget season. We got some very fortunate weather near the end that helped us stay in the green. For the black.
Could you repeat what you just said in terms of the, how much was left over from last year and how much was returned to the taxpayer? I thought you said it was 600,000 and you returned 500, is that true?
So we returned, I said we returned over $500,000, and it was about 600,000.
So
We retained, from my memory, we retained the full fund balance that we're allowed to, and we still returned.
Yes, that's
Oh,
correct.
so we retained the full fund balance of 1 million, and we returned almost $700,000 to the taxpayers.
Got it, thank you.
That's
Yeah.
true.
Okay.
And that was in the August timeframe. Right? So I agree with Charlie here, my interpretation of this is that we're making an effort to responsibly fund what we need to fund in our budget. This process has been going on since December. I think, as Ruben stated, we started out about an 8% increase, got that down to 3.3% proposed budget. I look at other schools, districts around here, I think they're more than that. I think Town of Ringe even has like a 5.5% increase. I think they've been very responsible in developing this budget. This is, again, a methodology that we can use to purchase things now, which we think are necessary to continue our education. So,
Well, necessary and to get them earlier is advantageous to us as we continue to move it. These are, number 6 is critical for our education. Obviously, the technology pieces are needed as well. Those exact items are talked about every year with the exception of maybe the firewalls, because you don't need to put that into the annual budget. Tractor, we usually have one item, could be a couple different items that we, wanted to put in. I chose the tractor as opposed to putting all the equipment in that we need for cleaning and so forth, but, this is what we saw that was reasonable and necessary. And the reading in particular, if we have it now, it's gonna be very, very advantageous to us to get moving on that.
Ruben,
It
this,
takes a long time to implement, programming like that.
this could have been added on to the new budget, that amount, but we're
Yeah.
trying to keep that
Yeah.
lower, to
Yeah.
keep the taxes lower.
Yeah, it's sort of, I mean, it's a practice, whether it is out of the unassigned fund balance for now, or whether it's out of the existing budget, or whatever, we've done this practice multiple times in the last 9 years. To help to make that as much as possible. Obviously, COVID, some things changed over a 2-year period of time, and inflation and so forth. But prior to that, you would see that we had things fairly flat for a long period of time, and this was a mechanism that we used in the
I have a couple questions. One is, we returned, there was $250,000 that was available, and where was that money parked in terms of using, and how was that applied to this budget? Or was it? It's my first one.
So the hearing at which that expenditure, receiving that money was approved, was in effect changing our budget.
Yep.
It was allowed by the state because of the timing with which they approved that additional money. They said that you could change your budget and increase it if the voters voted to accept it. That money was spent, or is in the process of being spent, on needed upgrades to these buildings.
Right.
And if it hadn't been, those amounts would have been in this year's budget.
and at a higher cost. Most likely.
The other part is that I think why some people have their nose out of joint is that if you had put these in the budget would have been higher, but it would have been transparent. Here we have these monies, this is the budget, it's a little above default, or maybe right near it. By going below default, you become, you take it out of the voters' hands in a sense of making decisions on your budget. Because then, if you oppose it, then the default is higher. And so, it's just a matter of appearances in terms of what's the process going on. That if it had just been left in the budget, then it would have been to the voters, do we need this? Are we gonna take, go a little above the default? They probably would have. But, it does have a little bit of a, why do it this way as opposed to the straightforward method? And go ahead.
Does the budget go up if we keep those two, so does that?
Sorry, I can't hear you, Nick.
If we add those to the budget we proposed, it would increase the default as well, right? It's not like default stays the same.
No,
No?
Not on the
Shouldn't
new
have.
items.
Thank you.
not for new items, yeah.
On some of the
Well,
items.
yeah, but not the Chromebooks. That's a sign.
The firewalls would be part of your default?
They would not be.
No, okay. So what would be part of the default in here?
Chromebooks,
The copiers aren't on a replacement cycle?
copiers might be on the replacement cycle as well, we've been doing that.
It is?
I think so, you think so, yeah.
But definitely the Chromebooks.
Yes.
So, this is your report. You talked about $750,000 to reduce fund balance according to the financials for the 2022-23 ending last June 30th. It says fund balance to reduce taxes, $137,000, but you retained $500 and some. That's your report.
Yeah, it's 2 years ago.
Pardon?
What year is the appropriated funds?
It's March of '23. We don't have '24 yet. And the taxes haven't been done
I'm just
for,
asking which report you're reading from, so I can reference it. Thank you.
Yeah.
March of '23 would have reflected previous year, because we didn't have the end of the year yet.
it said 2022, 23 school year. That would have been ending last June to offset
Well, that-
last
that is the-
December's taxes.
That is the report for '22, '23.
Right, it would
Produced in
have,
March, before the end of the.
we haven't done the
year.
taxes for '24 yet. This was what it would have been for '23.
The action.
I was
items-
in favor I voted for, I supported the warrant article because I think it's a really good idea. But I think that it's less than transparent with the way you're doing it. If you have, this is not in the budget, but you're gonna use the so-called, and I'll call it, the reason that I call it a surplus, because towns don't have surpluses. You know, they have unassigned fund balance, but it's can't be spent. So in your case, in school districts, they're different animals, you actually can spend what you retain. But it sounds like you're assuming you're gonna have this much money left June 30th. But you need to use the unassigned fund balance to buy them now because of cash flow issues. And then you're gonna replenish your surplus with that amount of money July 1.
So I think the way it works is that, yes, we will replenish the unassigned fund balance if there is a surplus, but if there isn't, we won't replenish it, we can't. So instead of having $1 million in that unassigned fund balance, we would have, 700,000 or, that 5% is a maximum, it's not like a guaranteed amount.
No, I understand, but you can retain it year after year
Yes.
and use it in subsequent years to cover expenses unplanned or unforeseen. Or just what you want to spend it on. That's my problem.
Unapproved.
I'm not saying these aren't worthwhile expenditures, but I think it's just less than transparent, the way that it's being done. My 2 cents.
I feel the same way.
I feel the same way.
I think it's just shady, the way it's going down.
If you wanted to put it before the voters and take a vote on it.
Yeah,
I mean, yeah, there probably are a lot of good things up there that need to be taken care of. But let the voters decide. Don't come in after the budget's all set and whatnot, and then try and come in with another
Or before the-
$300,000 from the slush fund. Put it before the voters. I'm sure you need a new tractor. Get a new tractor, put it before the voters. Tell them, look, the tractor we got's a piece of junk, it's costing us a lot of money to fix. Be cheaper to get a new one. Okay, but we'll get you a new tractor. Just seems a little underhanded to do it this way.
I think it's part of the reason that we have these hearings, and we're required to have, is to hear that kind of feedback, so we appreciate
I'm
it.
surprised there's not more people here.
We're always surprised at that, to tell you the truth.
Should come to our meetings.
I think the reason, wasn't the reason we actually came to this is because one person came to the meeting and said, please get the number down. And we were like, it was one person there. And so we came up with this, and that one person isn't here who wanted that. Like, was suggesting, making suggestions of coming below the default budget.
But I would have to agree that it isn't transparent, because it was taken out of the budget. And then I get that the tax rate's gonna be lower, but you made the proposed budget much more palatable. So people would be foolish not to vote for it. But you had every intention of spending the money on this. It was just taken out of the budget, so the proposed budget would be lower, and people really don't have a choice. It's really, I have to agree with all these folks here that it's not transparent the way that it's being done, but I get it. I wish that it could have been done so people are just looking at the numbers, they're not looking that you need these things, and yeah, you need those things, for sure. But it definitely isn't transparent, because you have every intention, you cut it out of the budget to make the budget lower, but you knew you were gonna,
Get it anyway.
you knew you were gonna have it part of your budget.
Excuse me, what is your name?
Sorry, Mary Beth Quill, Range. I should know better.
I also have a letter here that I've been asked to read from Mr. Tom Coney's, who served as a member of the Budget Advisory Committee from Ringe. He was not able to be here tonight, and he asked me if I would read this. Mr. Chairman and board members, I am providing this letter because I could not attend tonight's hearing in person related to unassigned fund balance expenditures. Please accept my apologies. After sitting through 3 school board meetings relating to the school budget, I'm fully aware of what the school's administration is hoping to do by getting the board's approval to spend the unassigned fund balance. Some brief review. The school's currently proposed default operating budget is approximately $1 million higher than last year's approved budget. The 24-25 operating budget was originally proposed at approximately $1 million higher than the default, or in other words, roughly $2 million higher than last year's approved budget. Through discussions, this board asked the school administration to review and bring the proposed operating budget down to or lower than the proposed default. The administration did this. They provided a new proposed budget slightly below the default budget. They accomplished this by juggling and/or rearranging desired personnel positions. They also removed numerous desired spending items to accomplish the directive from the board. So here we are. Some of those items removed from the proposed budget are the subject of tonight's hearing, $337,280.87 worth as posted. The district has approximately $1 million in unassigned funds based on information provided during the meetings I attended. These unassigned monies have accumulated because they are carryover monies that the district didn't need and chose to hold on to rather than return to the taxpayers that were overcharged for operating expenditures. So, back to tonight's hearing. The expenditure of $337,380 was removed from the proposed operating budget in order to have the budget lower than the default. If this board approves the retention and expenditure of the monies subject to this hearing, your request to lower the proposed budget fell on deaf ears. The administration is attempting to obtain nearly everything originally proposed, one way or another. This hearing to retain and expend this money is simply a smoke and mirror attempt to give the appearance of a lower budget. The unassigned fund, in simple terms, is money the taxpayers, your constituents, paid that wasn't used or needed previously. This excess money should be returned to the taxpayers and used to offset the expanding costs of the school system and not used to increase spending. Therefore, in closing, as a taxpayer and constituent, I'm requesting and in fact demanding that this elected school board refuse to accept this smoke and mirage of cutting the budget, hold the school administration to the fire to live with the budget they proposed, reject the retention of unassigned funds for expenditures removed from the budget, vote to return unassigned funds to the taxpayers to help offset the cost impact of large budget increases. Respectfully submitted, Tom Coney's Range, taxpayer. I don't know if anybody on the board has any comments they'd like to make about that or about anything else that's been said.
I have another question.
Yes, Leslie.
Leslie McLean and Jeffrey, when the budget is approved, or if the budget is approved during voting, Are we approving as voters a line item budget, or are we approving a total dollar amount?
We're approving a total dollar.
Okay, so in my opinion, I gave the school district $31 million. They gave me an idea of how they anticipated spending it and where the anticipated revenue was coming from. Right, that's the transaction, right, that I approved the money, but I am not receiving a promise from the school district of exactly how they're spending every budget line, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And the school board has discretion on how to spend those budget lines. Thank you, I just wanted to make sure that was clear.
And I guess I'd just like to say, I think that Mr. Coney provides some good information, makes some good points, but I disagree with him that it's a smoke and mirrors effort. The effort was to try and bring the budget down. As some of you have noted, you know, the average taxpayer sees one thing, which is what's it gonna cost this year. And yeah, it's true that it being lower than the default, you know, encourages people to vote for the budget as opposed to the default, but it's not the only option too, right? You can also try to change the budget at the deliberative hearing, and those things have been done before. So, and, you know, our understanding is that we're doing the right thing by bringing the budget down as low as we did. We are hearing what a number of you have said about the transparency. It certainly was not our intention to try and come in the back door, but I see how it looks like. It's one comment.
I agree with this. This is something that's been done regularly in the past. There's no reason to foresee, okay, a significant objection, because we've done it in the past to address cash flow, and that's all we've done this time is address cash flow. And the idea is, there are 1,800, I'll go through this again. There are 1,800 line items. Right? We've gone through the 1,800 line items. We've made cuts as best we could. When we go to the default budget are basically things that are required by the state. In other words, you try to do everything this year with the same amount of money you had last year. And that goes for utilities. It doesn't account for any kind of inflation whatsoever. And so we've done our best to come in with a budget that is as low as we possibly can for the taxpayers. Right? And there are ways of doing this. One is creating priorities and going through a list of priorities and eliminating things off of the bottom, the lowest priority things. We've done that. Okay? We've done everything we could to try to accommodate the needs of our teachers and our students, right, and the needs of the taxpayers. It's a balancing act. And so we've tried very hard to do that. And as far as being smoke and mirrors or being sneaky about things, if anyone had attended the budget meetings, they would have known exactly what was going on, all right? Because we were not trying to hide this at all. I spoke out at the time and said, hey, look, we're going to have a surplus this year that exceeds $360,000. I'm chairman of the school finance committee, so I have a good idea of what our surplus is going to be. And it's going to be greater than that. So that money, instead of just going away, could be used for things that we need. Things that were not in next year's budget. And that's what we did. All right? And it was a choice that we're making right now, is whether or not to do this. I, for one, feel that it's a smart thing to do for our taxpayers because it keeps next year's taxes lower and it provides their children with the things that they need this year. Okay? That we couldn't get for them next year. So that's where I'm coming from. It benefits the kids, it benefits the teachers, and it benefits our taxpayers.
Currently, we have some nice momentum around literacy. We've been working, like I said, again, on the research on this for a bit of time. We know that, as anyone attended the meeting, where our expenses tend to increase. Some of our areas increase where kids have more need. So the area of student services or special education. Literacy and reading and proper instruction is one big element of that, that if done really properly early on and with fidelity and intentionality, with the best type of resources that we have, with the best instruction, of course, because professional development goes along with this, you can help reduce other costs when you do a lot of early intervention in a sense. And so this is plus because of the need to make sure that we have some continuity as we come into this school. And then throughout grade 8, there are other benefits to being able to make sure that we're getting a head start on this.
Yeah, and I'll just say I agree with what Charlie stated there, right? We've been talking about this in the open in public meetings since December 2nd. And really, our intention, at least my intention, was to get the budget as low as possible, right? So I'm proud that we're presenting a budget below the default. I don't think that's a negative thing to say, hey, we're presenting a budget below default. The motive for doing that is recognizing the impact that it does have on taxes, right? So if it was possible, which we didn't know at the time, right? Again, if you're going back to December 2nd, we're looking at an 8% proposed budget increase. The board did ask, myself included, is it possible to get this near or below default? Which is again, cutting 5% plus, cutting it from, an 8% increase to a 3% increase. There's a lot of work that's gone on over the last month and a half to do that. This is a vehicle that we're using in order to purchase things that we can use now, right? And that is an option that is available to us to take our unassigned fund balance, understanding that we're gonna have a surplus at the end of the year, and we'll manage that as a school district, as we do every year, to purchase things now that will benefit the students, decrease the taxpayer impact. There's nothing here that we're looking to do to get one over on the public, right? We're presenting as low a budget as possible, using every tool at our disposal to provide education to the children. It may appear, and I'm sure some of you may still think that we're trying to move things around. That wasn't our intent.
Next, Chris.
Can I just say, comment? Sorry. I just want to clarify that all of these things will be put in use this school year, right? These are things that will be used. This tractor will be mowing grass. The students will be using the Chromebooks. We're buying it this year, we're using it this year. Just want to make that clear.
Thank you, Christine, and this Roberta.
Well, I think
Oh, sorry.
Lisa had something.
Yeah, I think Carl's been raising his hand for a while.
Oh, okay.
First of all, to your point, I never implied or tried to imply that anyone's being nefarious here. I said there's a perception because of the process that I've been hearing. But I don't believe any of you went through this, and you should be applauded for going from an 8% increase and getting it down to a 3%. And that's an achievement. The town of Ringe, which is not your problem in terms of our taxes, is actually, we've been so tight. Last year, our rate went down and we took less money from the taxpayers, and we probably shouldn't have because of these, you like to get things level and not have the changes. And we have been too tight and we are suffering for it. And this year, we are trying to get our salaries up to competitive rates so we don't keep draining valuable people. And we're coming in with about an 8% budget increase. And that is tough for our town. It's like $400,000. Then I look at this, and that's pretty much our coverage. To do all the fixes that are in place right now. I think we're going to get our budget passed. I think people trust us, and we're we're going forward, and it's not the school board's problem to bail us out. But the idea that if we could get the impact this year reduced while the town's going up, it'll be a more level effect on, the taxpayer. And that's where I'm trying to look for. We should not have had to do this big increase. We should have upped what we were doing over a period of years, and that's on us. We were too tight, and we finally got to get where we are. But this is a tough, we have about 1/6 of the taxes, the cost of running a town as you have for running the schools for 2 towns. It's understandable. It's mostly in labor. You have a huge workforce. We have a smaller one. And, it's understandable. Our operating budget went up a bit, about 50,000. That's about, about 1% of our budget. $50,000 is a percent of our budget. 300,000 is 1% of your budget. And so we cannot, the last year's tax increase was staggering for a lot of people. I was getting stopped in the street by neighbors, what's happening to taxes? And this is a year when ours went down. We had brought our team here to the school district. I was kind of hoping you would do a analysis of what caused that, so this thing won't happen again. Perhaps going below default is an overreaction, because I know you felt that too, in terms of the tax impact on the taxpayer. But the whole idea is that we want to try to get the tax rate as even as possible, so that people aren't taken back by that. But anyway, I'm sorry if I didn't mean to come across as you were being deceitful. It's just the process. It would have been better, in my mind, if you had gone right at default or above and included those things, and that's the only hindsight I'm looking at. Because it's not really default if you're gonna add things in afterwards. It's not below default, so, but.
Roberta Acer. I just want clarification. These items you are gonna purchase this year, immediately. Why not, as was stated, you have a bottom line budget, and Charlie thinks that you're gonna have more than this is left over. Why not do it in June? Towns do commonly buy things to keep them out of next year's budget. When they have money left over, December 31st, they get invoices and encumber the funds, which would be much more transparent than, unless these things are needed right now. If they're needed right now, then they weren't gonna be put in next year's budget. That's what I'm confused. Are these items, were they taken out of next year's budget? Or were they taken out of the 23-24 budget?
They were taken out of the proposed next year's.
The 24-25 budget?
There were other items that could have been taken out, but these were the items that we could use now. And that's the important thing. Waiting to buy this, for instance, in June, when K through 8 science or reading and literacy curriculum couldn't be used at that point in time, so we make a curriculum purchase this year but not use it, is problematic for us.
Well, you'd be using it in the next school year.
We need to use it the year of.
Yeah, we didn't want to be deceptive in thinking that these are part of next year's budget. These would have been part of next year's budget, but here are things that we can use today, right? We can use all of these things today. They're rightfully and legally able to be included in this year's budget, right? We're not just buying them at the end of the year, saying they're for this year, and then all the kids go home and we're not really using them, right? That would be deceptive. My mind.
So you're starting a new curriculum this late in the year?
We're at the halfway mark. They're in the process of continuing, they've narrowed it down to 3 of the items. They're still doing a little more research. Once that is done, we know what the different ones cost. By purchasing them, we then end up being able to do a pilot of sorts prior to doing a full implementation next year. So also the teachers will have everything over the summertime that they will need, so you're providing a lot of time for them to be able to meet with one another, discuss the process, do some professional development, do some professional reading, implement things in small ways, try some different types of techniques that are outlined in this process, which science of reading, I mean, a lot of it, you would have grown up with reading through phonics and phonetic awareness and things of that nature, which we certainly do use. This just extends a lot of it all the way through the system as opposed to, say, just K1 and 2. Plus, there are a lot of other areas of literacy than just decoding and comprehension.
And I think you're saying that there's a long ramp up on this anyway.
Implementation of this is going to take some time.
Exactly.
It benefits us
So-
significantly to be able to.
If you wait until the summer, you might not be talking 25, 26.
Our impact is going to be much faster if we
Yep.
were able to get it now.
Okay.
There's a lot of momentum right now for a variety of reasons. There's just a lot of good movement happening in both schools. And there's a high level of excitement around this. This will be implemented better if it's purchased now.
Okay. Anybody else from the public will have anything they'd like to say or raise at this time? Any members of the board, any more?
Yes, I'd just like to say that I apologize to people who think that this was not transparent. I never even thought of that because it's something that we've been doing for a long time. It's nothing new. It's done not only in our district, but other districts as well. Where we, try to use, just like the town says, at the end of the year, they try to use any leftover money to pre-buy stuff that they need for the next year, and that's all we're doing. But the difficulty with us is, our financial system does not allow us to overspend a budget line item on the budget, all right? So you have to then go along and say, this line item is gonna spend less. Our finance CEO can't do that at this point in time. So what we end up with is we end up with encumbered funds. I don't know if you understand what this is. We have encumbered funds that eventually will not be spent. And that constitutes the surplus. But by the time we know that, it's too late to cut the invoices and get the product. Because just sending out an invoice does not qualify for putting it in this year's budget. What we need to do, besides sending out an invoice, or sending out a bid, okay, is get an invoice back with the, either the product or the work started, all right? And those are the requirements that we have. And so we lock up all of our invoices, or I should say, our bids, the first part of May. Because we know darn well we're not gonna get anything back by June 30th. So first part of May is when we lock those things up, we don't send them out anymore. So we need to act early in the time frame to get the things processed that we need to get processed. And it's mostly because things have to go out to bid, you have to select one of the bidders, and so forth. So it's not an easy practice. But I want to apologize because it may seem deceptive, it may seem not transparent, but it may seem transparent, not transparent. But I'll do everything I can to make it transparent. And if your suggestion is next year to put in our budget, these are things we're gonna pre-buy for this year, we can do that. It's not a difficult thing to do.
I would just like to say, that I'm so appreciative that you guys are here, and it's so nice to hear your input. And I think maybe part of the transparency that's lost is not starting in the beginning of the budget, like in December, to come and give us your input and tell us what you think when you see these things, or when you see where the default budget is and where our budget is, to give us the input. There's nobody. And so, listening to you guys, I totally hear what you say, like, yeah, it could come across that way, but then when you hear the explanation and what we've done, I'm hoping that you guys can see how it was done, and maybe next time, come earlier. Give us the information, talk to us about it, go over it with us. Might make it a little more transparent. But, and thank you for coming and saying what you've said.
Yeah, I
It's
was
helpful.
Yeah, I was gonna say, thank you for coming and giving me feedback, even if it's different than what we're thinking, I'd like to hear it personally. And Roberta, you did say that you couldn't access the meeting minutes on the website. I was able to, and
No, I said I couldn't access
the agenda.
the public posting for this
Ah.
hearing.
Okay.
It's not there unless you get to the agenda,
Right.
which takes a long time to get there. And Facebook does not count, because not everybody's on Facebook.
But
Not
not everyone,
Not
not
everybody
everyone's
has
on the
a computer.
website, not everyone's at the library, not
Nobody-
everyone's at the post office.
Not everybody's got a computer.
You know, so there are,
A lot of people
there are different
rely on
things.
the
It's
paper.
posted at the school.
Yep.
It's posted.
Thank you for putting that.
But if you typically post on your website, it needs to be there. That's one of the things they changed. And there's no way to get there.
I hear you on that.
With the money that's spent on technology.
Okay, so process now to close the public hearing, correct? So if there's no other comments, we're gonna close this hearing and then discuss what we're gonna do on this.
Thank you all for your service.
Thank you for coming.
Doesn't look like
Thank you for
fun.
coming.
You don't have to, no.
Yeah, you don't have to.
No, that wasn't us letting
I'm
you
not
go.
with that.
I'm going to.
We're so entertaining.
This is for the board, yeah.
All right, so
Do I need to make a motion to close it? Is that what you're waiting?
do we need a motion to close it?
You can close the public hearing.
Oh.
Yeah, and then but we would need to call the public hearing, the public, session order.
Okay. So, we've had our pledge of allegiance, now we're ready to start our public session, and we'll vote on this, whatever we're going to do here in the public session. Okay. So, public session is called to order at 7:52, and we're ready for the, any changes to the agenda?
I'd like to make an addition to the consent agenda. A resignation of Heather Cleveland, part-time childcare associate teacher, effective January 12th, 2024.
Thank you, Ken.
And I'd like to have the minutes removed from the consent agenda, please.
Okay.
All the minutes?
Why not?
Okay, thank you. It's easier.
John,
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion on non-public. I'd like to make a motion on non-public.
Yes, okay.
Is that okay, the motion, or?
Go ahead and make the motion.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we seal the minutes of today's non-public investment.
Okay. Thank you,
Second
Charlie.
that.
Thank you, Lisa. Second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed? None. Okay, so that passes 7-0. All right, so we have the resignation of, I'm sorry, Kim, could you give me that name again?
Heather Cleveland, part-time childcare associate teacher. Actually, I knew something before.
Okay, we're going to move the minutes. We'll do it separately. Okay. And now it's time for public comments, even though we've had our public comments as part of the hearing.
When are you going to address the public hearing?
What's that?
When are you
Yes,
going
I'm
to
sorry, it's
address-
not an item on the agenda, that's my fault. It's not specifically listed on the agenda.
So
What
you did-
public
you
comments
did-
is-
So that'll be another change.
No,
No, no.
The motion on the hearing,
Oh.
action on the hearing is not listed on the agenda, that's my fault.
That's the question.
Right.
All right, so that was your question.
Yeah, when are you going, usually at the conclusion of a public hearing, you vote on what's being presented.
Right. All right, so that will be another change to the agenda. In addition to the resignation and the removal of the minutes from the non-public, someone like to propose that we act on the unassigned fund balance decision pursuant to the public hearing. So we will add that after the public comments, is that work? Sure. Okay. And then, even we're not online tonight, it's only those of you who are here, but if anybody has another public comment that they would like to offer,
I do, John.
yes, Leslie.
Okay, Leslie, McLean from Jaffrey. I had this task this week of finalizing or creating almost 2 months' worth of minutes, which led to the following thoughts. Public comments should be restricted to the time scheduled in the agenda. Public comments are supposed to be comments and not conversations. They often devolve into conversations with the board, allowing an issue to be addressed solely because the commenter is upset. The board holds the calm person to a different standard and does not answer their questions. This unfairly favors the upset or disruptive commenter. There are rare appropriate times to respond to a public commenter. When a commenter disparages students by saying they are not worth the funds we spend on them, and that those funds should be spent on learners who will contribute more to society, the board should respond. The school board should not allow any public commenter to dominate a meeting. 3 to 5 minutes for most speakers is sufficient. When a person is repeating an issue, they should be told to stop. The December 18th meeting, where very important business needed to be done, was in fact hijacked by a commenter. The student representative from another meeting is right. There is a parking problem at CMHS. This impacts everyone. I believe student parking may be oversold. Who is supposed to be able to park in the lot at the SAU in the middle school? There are 4 to 5 SAU employees who frequently work late into the evening and leave the office in the dark, but we do not have reserved parking. Parking in the lower unpaved lots is not a good solution if you're leaving the building in the dark. Additionally, since we paved the lots a few years ago, we lost the handicap parking at the SAU entrance. That should be replaced. The Pratt should definitely reflect the performing arts program, since this is their venue too. The outside of the building has a mural for theater and one for basketball. The inside of the building should represent more than just athletics. Finally, I am eager to see the MOUs we develop for waiving facility fees. I'm especially concerned about town usage. I believe strongly that the fees to use the school or town facilities should be paid by the organization using the facility, especially for an event held outside of normal custodial hours or an event of high attendance. Also, improvements, changes, and additions to school or town facilities should be made and paid for by the organization that owns the assets. The school is not the town, and the town is not the school. The right funds need to be spent from the right budget to ensure that the right taxpayer is paying for the right things. And I believe I said that all in under 3.5 minutes. Thank you.
Well, you certainly have a lot of opinions for someone from Jackson. So thank you for your comments. Okay, any other public comment? Okay. Thank you. Then we're gonna move on to our, to the fund balance. Okay. So we've had our hearing. Would anybody like to introduce a motion or make a comment or suggestion? Okay,
Yeah, I'll make a motion to. Now. Appropriate? Correct me on the right word. No, I think it's just approve. I'll make a motion to approve the expenditure of not to exceed $337,000, $337,380.67 from the unassigned fund balance
retention.
for the purposes of purchasing, do I need to list all the
No, you just,
items? For the purpose of purchasing, it's been a long day. The listed, the items discussed in the public hearing that can all be utilized in the 2023-2024 school year.
okay, thank you, Chris.
No second.
Thank you, Lisa. Okay, anybody have any comments, discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None? Okay. Thank you, everybody, and thank you for going through this long process. And, you know, starting over a month ago. And far from finished, right? Just another step along the way. So, we don't have a student representative with us tonight, and we do have the superintendent. Ruben, do you have a report you'd like to share with us?
Sure, I'll make it kind of brief tonight, as we've been here and have a fair amount more to do. I'd like to say a shout out to Leslie. Leslie's here taking the minutes tonight and did do a lot of work on completing the minutes that we were behind for just some reasons of transition here within the school district. And also, we were able to meet last week and look at our recent social media postings and the data behind that. And over the past month, with some work that, by and large, it was Leslie doing the work, but also just working with all the schools and all the groups to be able to acquire all of that information. You know, people were very generous about giving some really neat news that we were able to share out there on social media. We had a lot of good reception to that, a lot of good interaction. I think interfacing with the community in a better way. You know, I think that's really commendable. So I want to thank her for that. And then also the work when we did put out the flyer that went out and was mailed. That was also managed and edited and so forth with my Liz support. some nice work with us as well. I think and we're all learning a lot of new skills, and so I just want to say thank you to those individuals. As I stated before, we had a team of several elementary teachers, classroom teachers in particular this time around, led by the assistant principal of teaching and learning, Ashley Flamino, went to Manchester schools to view the implementation of one of these programs that we were just discussing. Also, Heather, our former assistant principal of teaching and learning here, she does some contract work with us through a grant, has done a lot of the research on this to help us continue to move forward in a quick way, and has actually been working on this for a couple of years. She also went, and we had individuals from the middle school go as well. So it was a nice K through 8 effort, and I'm excited to hear about what they saw, what their experiences were, what they got out of it. And again, taking the time they need to in order to gain that information. We've had some successful sporting events at the basketball and so forth, and one of those events that's coming up is the Hoops for Hope, which is this Thursday, and the high school varsity teams. It's do this every year, and it's a charity opportunity for the school. Sometimes the money is given to individuals within the community, sometimes it's given to an organization. But it is an effort where the teams come together. In this case, it's going to be Guilford and our school. We were just over there this past week. Both the girls and the boys played back-to-back. They'll be doing the same thing over here this Thursday. So the Pratt, I would imagine, will be full and eventful. So we'll be celebrating during that time frame the athletics side of things and also community coming together. So that's something to look forward to. Lots of good work with our MTSSB that's being implemented within both the grade schools, the Jaffrey Grade School and the Ridge Memorial School. We've been able to hit some successful milestones, not only in the improvement of our data there, which I think is regularly shared out at the education committees, but also we've been able to get the curriculums that we need in order to continue to finish our pilot processes and to go into full implementation of some of the work that we're doing there, which is really along the same lines as the behavioral, social, emotional side of implementing the academic, the reading. So we're moving very well with people in charge and making sure that everything's managed very well. I met with one of them today, one of the administrators over at the elementary school for about an hour and a half this morning, just to hear about I would say the triumphs and also the struggles. And it was really good to hear about all the work and I think some challenging work that is being done with the preschool right now. We have made some adjustments with how some of the work was being done. And I can say that the early numbers of those signing up for pre-K are pretty high. And so I'm excited to see what happens. It's early on. The library's been open for just a little bit, and Jaffrey has quite a few. I think they're up to 25 applications. We usually tap out around 28 to 30, and we still have some time to go. And Ringe is, I think, at around 19. And so, again, that same number, that 28 to 30. But Ringe has a larger number of individuals who are in the current 3-year-old program that haven't yet gone forward to apply. So we'll send some more information out to those families. I would expect that our pre-K will be pretty full next year. So I'm excited about that. We have, we've invested in that. We want that to happen. So that's great. I'll leave it at that.
Okay. Well, thank you. That's a nice little list of important items and events and things that are being worked on.
And our student representative did reach out a while and apologize for not being able to be there today.
Great, thank you for that as well. That's Maddie.
Yes.
Bella,
Thank you.
Can I ask one question about the pre-K?
Sure.
If we were in a situation of having more students apply than we had room for, would we have a waiting list? Maybe, have we ever had that situation?
We haven't had a waiting list in a couple of years. We've been at, we've done in reversal in the sense that everyone who wanted it has been able to get a position. So we would, it would have to depend on how many more. If it was close, we'd probably try to find a way to make sure that we can get everyone in there. If we had quite a few more, like was another classroom full of people who wanted to be there, we'd have to have some conversations, yeah. That would be a waiting list. We'd have to do that. That would be interesting. I don't know if it would be a good problem to have, but it would be an interesting problem to have. It would say something.
Yeah, well, there's all those
I'm just
little
gonna-
babies, right? Will be coming in physical age soon, so
Yeah.
maybe something to look at.
So we're gonna excuse Kim at this time, got to go home, take care of a personal matter that just came up relating to a minor.
Yeah. It's not really big, doesn't hurt a lot. He didn't tell anybody he was home from the basketball game, so he's standing out there.
children.
Oh my gosh. So sorry, guys. The important voting is over, though, like, it's over.
Okay, Ruben, thank you for your report and thank you for the questions also. Anybody else have any other questions of Ruben about any of the things that he's just covered? Good, I hope that Kim signed you before she left.
Oh, gosh, I hope she did too.
She signed some.
She signed some, I saw she was signing something.
Okay, so we'll have to remind her tomorrow to come in and see Andrea in the main office.
Okay. All right, very good. Seems like there's always a lot going on. We're getting towards the end of our semester, right?
There's a lot going on.
We're next to the consent agenda. Would somebody like to make a motion relative to the consent agenda?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended.
Thank you, Christine.
I second that.
And thank you, Nathan. Okay, if there are no, are there any questions or comments about the consent agenda? Well, seeing none.
I have a
Yes.
question about the request to waive facility fees. So there's 2 dates on the calendar, January 28th and February 11th. Can the Ringe Rec Department be confident that the gym will be available to them on these dates? Because I know that the Ringe basketball program has been bumped a couple times.
I think these are on Saturday, correct?
I don't know.
The 28th will be a Saturday.
28th and
1/28 is a Sunday.
A Sunday, yep. So
Sunday.
I think
The
that's
11th
right.
is a Sunday.
2/11 is a
Yeah, so
Sunday.
Sunday should be fine. We won't have any being on those days. I mean, could something happen?
Well, yeah.
That would be probably
An emergency.
more likely like an emergency. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
No, it's a good question. I had some interesting, I had an interesting conversation with the Ringe recreation and a select board member and the other day. And I don't know what the data means, what the information means yet. I'm dying, I'm like wanting to find out more. I want to survey, I want to find out what happened. When we first started to do like no cuts, at the middle school level in particular, there was a concern that maybe the rec department would have fewer individuals signing up for the smaller programming. And what has happened, whether it be because some people aren't happy with the policy that we have, or whether it's because we have kids interested in the sport now who haven't been playing it before. Dan shared what, it was something like, the statistic was, in his years prior to this, they had 1 to 2 travel teams, and they're upwards of 8 now. And then it's actually grown. The program's grown during that time frame. So I have some ideas. There could be a lot of different reasons for it. It could be a combination of reasons, but I do wonder if by getting more kids involved over these last 2 years or so and having higher interest, that maybe some more people have signed up. Now, it could be that there was people who couldn't stand what we did and they said, nope, we're just gonna go and do travel. Either way, we're having a lot, I don't know where to come from, but either way, there's a lot more participation, which is really neat. This is a nice conversation to have.
I can say for certain that I know that there are some kids who are doing both programs.
Yeah.
School, the school program and the fringe.
It was mostly the middle school, I think, what we were talking about, yeah. Yes. Is it okay?
Yes, sure.
I'd like to publicly thank Ruben for coming to the town and sitting down with us and going through this. It was very nice to get together, talk face to face, and not have to go through what forms or, speculation and everything else. And, it's very generous of you to do that. And I also want to thank you for letting our finance people come to the district and, try to talk about budget and things, and there's still some questions I have here, but I'm gonna ask you after the meeting. Charlie, I have some questions for you on that, so.
Okay, well, thank you for the comments, and it sounds like good communication, so those things sometimes have multiple impacts, because you're talking about waivers, but there's other things that we, okay, so we have a motion and a second related to the amended consent agenda. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. And opposed? None? So that passes 6-0-0. Okay, and now we want to go to the minutes. So,
Those got taken. Pretty sure, right? Did-
Yeah, they're outside of the consent agenda.
yeah, this is
Anybody?
my-
I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes for November 20th public, December 2nd public, and December 18th public.
I'll second.
that was the November 20th, December 2nd, and December 18th.
Seconded by Preston?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Well, thank you, Lisa, and you second, Christine, thank you. Is there any discussion? Okay, I would just like to ask a question of the board. Has everybody had a chance to read these minutes and review them reasonably carefully?
Yeah, I went through them. I went through them, I didn't have any issues with them.
Okay.
Sorry if I'm too low sometimes.
We all do it. I think those of us with hearing aids are even worse sometimes, because we've got our hearing aids turned up, so, yeah.
I confess I was interested in that, the meetings that I was not here, how many times things were sent to the policy committee. Thank you. Taking note of that.
That's an old tradition.
You missed it.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so, would someone like to, we have a motion and a second, so all those in favor of approving the minutes for the 20th of November, 2nd and 18th of December, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None? So that passes 6-0. Okay. We have the minutes for January 8th and January 11th. Would somebody like to make a,
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of January 8th and 11th.
okay? Thank you, Nathan. And
I'll second.
thank you, Chris. So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? And everybody has had a chance to read those, I presume? They are, they're long minutes. There's a lot in
Thanks to
there.
Leslie, thank you.
I have no life.
You caught up, now you can have your life.
Yeah. I'm going away tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock.
Okay, so all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain?
I abstain.
Okay, thank you, Lisa, and everybody else, so that passes 5-0-0. 5-0-1.
501.
You already have that. Thank you. I'm the last one to sign.
You can sign all of those.
Oh, yes, and all the other ones that are coming
Because then we
around.
can post them and people can not complain that they're not there.
Okay,
Okay?
so now we're on to action items. We have the Durant Fund expenditure up to $75,000 for painting the Pratt Gymnasium stage and lobby and replacing appliances in the fax classroom. Ruben, do you want to address that?
Yeah, ordinarily I would have Mr. Dustin talk about this because this is something that he's been working on for several months since the beginning of school. And we had to get some interpretation as to how to use the Durant Fund, and because we don't use it very often, maybe not in the ways that we've wanted to anyway. And so it's just a fund that we have that it's written for the improvement of the secondary school. I think it really talks more about the high school, but the Pratt Gymnasium, even though it's physically the middle school, I think we all understand that it's used by the entire school. And so this is just a continuation of effort to improve that space that is used by everyone in a way that is making certain that the stage is nice, the gymnasium is nice and kept. There are other things that we're trying to purchase around for the staging and so forth, not within this, but within other areas for equipment that we had in the budget to be able to make sure that they have the band and the chorus and so forth have the right risers and some better lighting. We spend a lot of money every year on lighting, but renting it, and so trying to figure out a way that's a little more cost effective to have something a little more permanent. I don't know where we are in the process of that yet, but we've been talking about it for years and we're trying to get it.
All right, thank you for that summary. Does anybody have any questions? Okay. So would someone like to make a motion to approve that expenditure?
I'll make a motion to approve the expenditure of up to $75,000 from the Durant Fund.
Okay, thank you, Christine. Charlie, thank you for the second. If there's no discussion,
Can we just,
Yeah.
would it be okay if you could amend that for the purpose of,
For the purpose of painting the Pratt Gym stage and lobby and replacing appliances in the fax classroom.
okay. Thank you, Ruben, for asking for clarification, and thank you, Christine. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstained? So that passes 6-0. All right, very good. Number 9, policy. I don't know if you have anything specific, Lisa?
Is that program?
The C,
Yeah,
program of studies, you
for
skip
review
that.
and advanced acceptance.
did that get linked?
It's not linked here, but I sent you the link, and then we can send it out to everybody.
Okay.
I only got it at like 5 o'clock tonight.
Okay. Their goal was not to
Just
have
in
it
time.
approved
I'm
tonight,
seeing.
but to have, to get it to you tonight, to be able to have a couple weeks to review it prior to going forward and accepting what we have in our later agenda.
So I'll email those links out tonight?
Yeah, that's fine.
Or tomorrow.
Yeah, where's tomorrow? I'm going, I know, I ain't going away. I work till midnight, I'm taking 3 days off, I don't care.
And will administration be here to talk about the programming studies?
Yeah, I believe what I was, in my conversation with them is that you should have a cover sheet of sorts that is telling you what the adjustments are.
Okay.
I don't know that there are a lot of them this time around in comparison to some years, but nevertheless, I indicated that we'd like to have a receipt of that for you to see and read, and we can get to here later on in the agenda, so that you have a couple weeks prior to making any movement with it. Certainly, once that's done, we can continue the other decisions. But I think that's what the first one in February, I think it's, whatever that board meeting is, when they would want it approved if possible.
Okay, and so Leslie will send us out the program of studies, but it won't have that sheet.
I'm checking right now to see what it has.
Okay.
I did send it over to you, Ruben.
Right. But in any case, if it's not there, then don't figure it be sent out so we can prepare.
Yeah, the first document is the proposed changes, and the second one is the draft program of studies. There you
Okay.
go.
Yep, so you will have the proposed changes right here.
All right.
Math, creative arts, career and future planning, which I think is mostly name changes. And then the other one is program studies. I'll send this to you.
I'm sending it right now.
Okay. You will not get it from me.
Okay. So, we have board committee updates, policy, or we just do policy under board committee updates, if there's anybody,
Our next policy meeting is going to be on Thursday, February 1st at 4 PM.
okay?
When is our school deliberative session? I'm trying to look it up.
7th.
Is it the
February
7th?
7th.
I think it is, so.
And that's at 6, right?
30.
Say it with great confidence, Christopher.
6:30, yeah.
And there is definitely a public notice, and that is definitely on the website.
Yeah.
First session, February 7th, 6:30. Session is Winter Memorial Gym. It's there. I just sent you all.
All right, any other board committee updates?
The education committee met, it was, the middle and high school that were presenting some updates. One of the things I wanted to highlight that was showing growth, within math and, reading, they showed the competency between literacy and math for the past, let's say, 4 or 5 years. And it showed a dip down in 2020, but since then, we have been going up, improving. I think we're still under the state average, but we're getting close to it, but showing that there's improvement to it. I know we've been kind of alluded to it when talking about wanting the curriculum and stuff, but that was kind of was you alluding to. That was the biggest thing I took out of that. Besides, that was the biggest thing I took out of it. One of the things also I think they said was getting going on with the literacy, incorporating the technical and traditional writing skills within the different courses, so that it's all the same. I know since I'm an engineer, and Mr. Chris, are you more of a technical writer? I know I am.
Try not to be anymore.
Yeah, more of a technical writer, so when I go into anything out there, I find it difficult, so if you get both of those skills, it's good.
What did you say, technical and what?
Right here.
I said traditional, I don't know, would be.
Well, traditional's good enough, I hear you.
Yeah.
Okay, and that was, when was that? Oh, that's okay, we can get that.
I think they said Thursday, the one, this month, that date was
Okay.
12th or 11th.
And we have a facilities meeting today. You're discussing some cooler than expected classrooms and how those could be addressed. And the conversation came up again about, question came up again about when the one-year warranty will begin with EEI. Sandy, I felt, really did a wonderful job representing our school and trying to make certain that we receive a complete product before the warranty begins. So I really appreciate that, Sandy. What else did we discuss?
That was, it always seems like a big one
Yeah.
these days. We're trying to, of course, get the best job we can, and there were two new people, Tucker, who was here, sort of replacing Leland, but also this week, a gentleman named Ken, who works with EEI. It sounds like he's somewhat of a troubleshooter, goes around for a brief time to projects to identify and classify the types of improvements that need or corrections that need to be made, and classifies them in the sense of trying to decide which ones require major upgrades and which ones are tweaks. So, one message that we got, and it's not the first one we've got, is that EEI plans to stand behind their project. I believe Ken said that his instructions from the boss, from Mike Davies, were go there and fix anything that needs to be fixed. I think it sounds positive in terms of the direction we're headed.
I don't like kids walking into cold classrooms. People can't learn if they're cold, so I get frustrated with that. This was a
Absolutely.
well-anticipated cold snap.
Absolutely. And one of the things that did happen, which we found out, well, Sandy had told us about it, you mentioned before the meeting. The boiler at RMS went out, nothing related to this HVAC project, but it's an older boiler, good quality, but some of the pieces need to be replaced. So in that circumstance, it's hard to identify where the source of the problem is. We need to get that back up and running. We did talk a little bit about Gale and the work that they're doing, Gale Associates, who are redoing all of our fields, primarily the ones here, the lower field and the upper field, and the ones in range. JGS doesn't have too much to really be worked on. And they haven't submitted a full report yet, but they are working on it. They do have a contract that clarifies what their deliverables are going to be, so that's a project that's in process. And I guess the only other thing that jumped out at me related to that was the timbering that's going on. And that's because today a gentleman from one of our towns wrote to express concerns that we were clear cutting that piece of land, that was not something we had the authority to do. Whether or not that's correct, part about the authority, we certainly don't have plans to clear cut it. That's not what our contract says. And we've been waiting almost 2 years now to get that timbering done because of the weather issues. It's been too soft to get heavy equipment up there. but it is up there now, they are working. And one of the things that Sandy and I agree on is that we want to check in with the company and make sure that they're not clear cutting. It's certainly not what their contract is, but there are samples around where, especially after a long period of time, you can have things done differently than you originally contracted, and we don't want to hear oops.
Miscommunication.
Yeah. Right.
Is it possible to visit the property, take pictures, show us what it looks like? and-
It is possible, but probably want to talk with the company too, just to make sure that we.
You know, a tree falling or anything.
Or into or slash, wait, wait.
There would be some safety concerns with going out there, but like John said, I think if I reach out to the loggers, I should be able to be allowed to go out there and take some photos for you guys.
Was it intent to cut filed?
Sorry, what did you ask about?
Was it intent to cut filed for Carl Prude?
Yes, was there intent to cut?
Intent to cut, it's a form that
Oh,
you
yes.
fill out for, yes.
Yes, I see. Okay.
Most of you guys.
All those forms were done a
Good.
long time ago.
Okay,
Yeah, I think that's sort of the issue, is that these forms were done a while ago, and then we weren't able to start cutting because the ground was never froze.
Right.
So now people have forgotten about the conversation.
We did,
Just want a few
we
board
did put it on
meetings.
our public documents, when our mailer is out in July, just to let them know that I was still on the docket. It's a small blurb, but it was there.
All right, are there any other committees that want to report out?
I'll just talk a little bit about the communications committee that's been a little bit on hiatus. Daisy and Juno are key members of that. They have been able to attend for different reasons, and, during the budget season, did not seem like a great time to start that back up. I think that's a conversation I want to have, but I can take the lead in that. We had made some progress over the course of, my short term so far. Over the last few months, haven't had much, so I'm thinking in the next few weeks, I think we'll need another member so we can discuss
And
that
I'm
as
taking
well.
over for Daisy.
There we go.
Yeah.
So, yeah, expect to see something like that.
Good.
And if I may speak, I'd like to join that until we know who's doing what.
Make it more.
Got it.
I'm
All right, there we go.
doing some coverage, so until all that's straightened out, I'd like to join.
Perfect.
Make it tomorrow.
What's that?
Make it tomorrow.
No, Dad, if you make it tomorrow, it's fine.
So, Chris, do you see, are there things that the communication committee needs to do or wants to do in the next 2 months between now and the?
I don't think I know that we didn't have too much that was actionable right away. A lot of our work had been towards kind of evaluating our progress since the last plan and setting our course, and setting our goals for, the next phase of what we're gonna do. So there's not too much time critical there, but I think it is important that we get together, revisit, again, those things which we have documented, and then set new goals, because I think things have changed since the last time we set those goals. And I'd like the group to come together and agree on, some short, medium, and long-term goals for what we want to do as far as communication. And I think things have just changed. Things in communication change like by the nanosecond, if you will. So certainly over the course of the last 3 years, there's been a lot of changes.
And with the change in leadership, if, when you meet, you've got things that you think we should be aware of, and we'll make you a board action item or
Yeah.
a communication item, get you on as a major piece of our agenda of some night.
Yeah, where we had left off, we actually had developed a survey, because that's what we had based the last set of goals on. We had developed a survey, and we still have that information. I think we were just in the comment section, it just never got out, so I think that's where we'll start. But again, take the direction of current and new members as well to see what we want to do there.
Ruben, if you want to think about putting together a goals meeting in February, that might be a good time. And the wellness committee will meet on February 1st.
Okay, great.
Busy.
All right, very good. Then, public comments too. Are there any members of the public here who would like to make a comment? Second, regularly scheduled section. If anybody wants to jump in, they can. And feel free to interrupt us. Board matters. Does anybody have a board matter they'd like to bring forward? Yes, Lisa?
I do. I would like to have the minutes formally removed from the consent agenda for future meetings to make it a little more efficient for Leslie. It's just one less step. So it's been talked about months ago, let's just do it.
Does anybody have any objections?
What are we doing?
Remove the minutes from the consent agenda, which we almost always have to remove anyway because of
And then approve them separately?
approve them separately.
Yes, please.
Yeah, they'd still be on the agenda just separately. Yeah. I think that's.
It's an excellent idea.
You had it.
It's a stupendous idea.
It's all you.
Okay, and I have another board meeting matter that's just related to what Chris was just discussing, the communications. We have just 2 weeks until our deliberative session, 2 weeks and a couple of days. And I think that's something that we want to be thinking about and be prepared for, so that we can communicate with our public effectively. I thought the board did a good job tonight. Let's hope to do the same thing on the 7th. But also, between now and the voting day, I think it's about 6.5 weeks. So we should be thinking, I'd like to at least throw out the idea, we should think about our communication with the public over not only our budget, which, given the default budget and the regular budget, maybe that is not as much of an issue, but we do have a teacher's contract, and that's going to be important. And we also have a question relating to the sale of the land out on Route 202. And we don't know how that's going to come out of the deliberative session, but no matter how it comes out, I think that something to give some thought to. If there's a message we want to get out to our public, well, this is the time frame we have.
Yeah, I agree, and just, being a new board member, right, I haven't sat on that side of it, the deliberative session, but certainly I've been in the audience, and I do think it's important that the public hear, for more than just Ruben, it's my opinion, right? I think when we have an issue like tonight, and the public can see that, the board is aligned with our administration on these things, I think it sends a different message. So yeah, I'm looking forward to participating in that in whatever way possible, and I think that we as a board should, take an active role in how that's communicated, both at the deliberative session and up until then. I think it's, we have done a lot of work. We do stand behind these budget, these warrant articles, and it's important for the public to hear that, right? It's not just Ruben or the administration getting what they want. This has been, to me, a collaborative effort in developing this, and people should understand that and all the work that's gone behind it. Just my opinion there, so as we go forward, certainly I will help with that.
I think my first deliberative session as a school board member, we had different school board members stand up and speak to the warrant articles, which then we did not do that last year. So that's something we could think about.
Honestly, this isn't a criticism, but I'll say, from my perspective, right, and I wonder if other members of the public, I wondered, because I didn't know really any of you guys, it's what the perception could be, right? It doesn't mean, but the perception becomes reality, right? Perception could be that, do these board members really support this? I know they're voting for it, but they're not saying anything, right? Sometimes with just a brief statement, doesn't need to be anything, long, the public will understand, yes, this is, again, a board that has worked together, they've developed this, and they support it. Doesn't take much sometimes to communicate that versus, just coming from the superintendent, who did a great job, speaking about it, for sure. But I think in anything, to be able to show kind of a united front, and these are all our elected officials that have worked on this and stood by it. Again, could be effective in public, right?
Good point. Well said. Okay, if there are no more board matters, then we just need one more motion.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Okay.
Second that.
It's a little slower though.
Good.
I'm tired.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, very good. Thank you, everybody.